Hi there, welcome to this build of a lovely vintage model from 1941, the Gladiator. And as you can see, this is starting to look really nice. We've got the wings finished, we've got the fuselage, basic skeleton done. There's still a lot to do on the fuselage. And we're building this from a great set of plans that you can download from the AutoZone website, and there'll be a link in the description below this video, and the plans, you can download them for free. As I said, the fuselage, we've got the basic skeleton done, and we're going to do a little bit more work on that today. We're going to be building up the nose section and mounting the engine. So what I will do is I will get these wings stowed away somewhere safely, because they're making the workshop look very small at the moment, and we'll take a closer look at the front of this and I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Right, you can see up till now we've got the 1/2 inch by 3/4 inch beach bearers in, and these are going to take a plate so that we can exchange the plate with the engine on it, and we can put a different size plate for a different engine. If we want to change the engine at a later date and we have fixed bearers and it's attached to the bearers, we may end up having to widen or narrow the gap. So having a plate will be a good solution. Now, to start with, I'm going to make the plate out of 3mm ply. This is just temporary, so I can get the engine mounted. I know how it's going to look and feel, and building sort of the rest of the nose around it. Eventually I'm hoping it will be aluminium, but if I need a little bit more nose weight added, because it's got such a long tail, and if we need that weight, I may end up making one out of brass, for example, because it's heavier, rather than putting ballast in the front. The engine I'm going to use a Sato 56, because I've got one. I know it's reliable. I just I just need to rebuild it. It's in a box of bits at the moment, because the bearing went off in the back. It started to eat it, so I stripped it down, cleaned it up, but I know this will be a good runner once I get it built back up. So the first thing I'm going to do is make this plywood plate and get the engine mounted with the prop driver just about 10mm, something like that, maybe 1/2 inch, 3/8 forward of the nose. So that's going to be the first job. I also need to build this front out with balsa. So I've got some soft 10mm balsa, and I'm going to make this, I'm going to have a think about how I do that, but it'll probably be in several sections to keep it thin rather than one big lump. And it needs to, you can see there's a little bit of a point down here, and there's a stringer that comes along to that point, and so we're going to have a little bit of a point on the bottom of this here as we build this round. And the final thing is I want to put a floor in the base of the, just looking for a bit of scrap balsa so I can just show you what I mean. Just want a little bit of a floor like that, so that we can make a sealed compartment under there, which we can access from this hole here. So we can put the battery in there, we can put ballast, and we're not worried about oil and fuel from the engine seeping down into it. So we'll put a base to the engine compartment. So I'm going to start to pull some of this together, and then we'll come back and see how we're getting on. Right, well, I've been cracking on with this now, and I've got this 3mm plywood plate cut out, and we've got the engine mounted on it. It's not screwed on, it's just placed in, and that is going to be how it's going to sit eventually. And if I just turn this round, we can see it's, once it's got the actual prop driver on there, it's going to stick just forward of here, and I quite like that idea. I think that would be quite nice, and as I said, it will get replaced by something a lot more substantial than 3mm ply. Now, I've been looking at a floor for the engine bay, and if we just lift this out, and I'm thinking about, let's just move this around, about placing that in there right up against the bearers. I've just chamfered that on the back, cut it out so it fits, and I'm just thinking that will go quite nicely like that. And we can put the engine in. Let me just take the engine out of the platform or the plate, and that will go like that quite nicely. So we'll have the front coming up, and I'll probably put a hole in here level with that, just to allow any fuel to drain out or anything spill, any oil. But it will keep that engine bay nice and separate from the compartment that we're going to have underneath. Now, there is something that we need to think about. There's a breather nipple on the bottom of Sato engines, and when that's mounted, we're going to need to run a pipe from that breather nipple. Let me just alter the camera slightly. Right, well, these Sato engines have got a breather nipple here, and I need to run a piece of tubing from that to the outside somewhere. And I could just bring it around the front here and have it hanging out, but it's going to look pretty messy. What I'm going to do, I think, is put a hole in this base plate, the floor of the engine compartment, and I'm going to run a piece of aluminium tube. This is really thin-walled, lightweight tube, and I'm going to run it down inside this compartment and coming out through the floor down here. So we can just have the piece of fuel tubing just coming down, and we could perhaps tie it to just the top of one of these legs, and I think that will make quite a neat solution, and you won't know that it's there. So what I think I'm going to do now is, before I glue this in and get that trimmed right, I've got some 10mm nice fairly soft balsa, maybe medium balsa, and I'm going to make up a front of the nose here and start to get that profiled, get that in place, and then we can put this plate in. Right, well, I've now been cracking on with this, and I've got a front piece cut and glued together, and that is going to fit in there quite nicely, I think, to form the front of this fuselage. And if I turn that over, we can get an idea of how that will be once it's glued in. Now, we've still got, once it's glued in, we've still got quite a bit just to sand off to get that to a nice smooth profile. But because of the thickness and the joints, we will still have a good thickness there. It's not going to sand down really thin. And we'll need to, once we've got rid of this piece here, we'll need to put another piece on there to allow the stringer to meet in with a bit of a point here. So that's going to need to be sanded to a point, so hence we'll need to build that up. Now, one of the issues we have, if I turn this back over, is that if we glue that in first and start sanding it up, I don't think we're going to be able to get this in. No, we're not. So what we're going to need to do is we need to cut this piece of balsa to size. We're going to need to get this in where we think it needs to go, and I think we'll glue that in first, and then we'll need to fit this. So it's going to be a little bit tricky just to get it right, but and also, so I think we'll get that glued in. We'll then need to position this piece of tubing, and we'll need to secure it in on the underside here somehow, and then we'll need to get that fitted. I need to think about the order and the sequence of how we build this up, because the last thing we want to do is get this in, get that, and then lose access to this so that we can't secure the pipe properly. So I'll have a think about this and start to get some of these trimmed up and glued in. Right, quick update. I've got this engine bay floor glued in and cut to size, and we may have to sand that just a little bit when we put the front on that way. And I've started to trim that. I'm going to sand that a little bit before I actually glue that in, but we'll get back to that in a bit. So that's glued in, and on the underside you can see I've got the pipe in to take the breather tube, and I've wrapped it in masking tape, which sticks to the aluminium really well. And now, because epoxy sticks to the tape really well and the balsa, I'm going to epoxy around here, and that will help give it a really good tight type fit, and around this brace here. And I've put the masking tape right up to the top, because when I've got this in, I'll probably put a little bit of epoxy around here as well. So that's all ready now, and I'm going to get a bit of epoxy on that, and I've got this piece here which is going to go down there up against the landing gear wire and the stitching, and I'm going to put epoxy down here, and I've put that piece of balsa on just to stop the epoxy spreading out, because I want to keep it concentrated around the stitching and the firewall. So I will get on now and spread some epoxy around and get that all glued in, and then I'll have to see about getting this this shaped and fitted. Right, definitely on a roll now. I've got the tube for the vent there, you can just see sticking up, and if we turn over you can see it's all glued in place. What I might do is turn it over and just put a little bit of epoxy on the underside there. Now you can see here I epoxied it, but there was quite a gap, so what I did is I just mixed some epoxy with a bit of sawdust, and that stops it running, because the Zap epoxy, 30-minute epoxy I'm using, is quite thin, and it really does run into gaps and everything, which is really helpful. But when you've got quite a big gap, it's not particularly helpful because it just runs through. So mixing it with a little bit of sawdust there really made a difference. And it doesn't need to be really high strength here, it just needs to hold that nice and secure. Now I've got the piece done for the front. I've sanded that off a little bit, and I've put a little bit of a brace on that side there, because I think that is going to sand down a little bit. So now this fits on quite nicely. I've just trimmed it up here so it will go around the pipe, and I will get that glued into place now like that. And once that's in place, as I said, I'm going to get a bit more balsa, and I will build this up coming out to here and to that point there. So I'll put a piece right across, and that will get that right profile. Now I don't think, I mean this oops, just hit the ceiling with my with the tail, but you can see in there that's quite a nice fit. Obviously there's going to be a lot of epoxy for fuel proofing, and as I said earlier, I'm going to put a hole in here, just a little bit of an oval hole, where the fuel or oil or anything like that collects in the engine bay can then seep out. Now if I reach over, we've got the engine platform which will just go on there, and obviously you can see what I'm going to need to do is make a little bit of a half circle there, perhaps maybe a little bit bigger, to allow the engine to fit in. But we can do all that once we've got this glued in and profiled. Right, well, I'm on the home stretch now. I've got this front piece glued in. I've CA'd it in, but I put epoxy around the hole here that I'd cut, so I knew it would run down and seal around the pipe there. Now I've put in a little bit of a cutout for the engine. It's clearly going to need to be bigger. I mean, it would be okay like that, so maybe I won't. I'll deal with that when it comes to profiling and finishing everything off. But I'm quite pleased with how that's looking. Now, the last thing we've got to do today with this, to get all this finished, is we've got this slither here, which I'm going to glue onto there. And I've profiled that so it's not far off. It's in the ballpark. But it will need a little bit more coming off here, and clearly this will need curving round. Once I've got that glued on there, I'm going to profile that. I'm going to bring this piece in line with these cheeks, and I'll probably put a little bit of a curve on there. I don't want to do too much profiling, to be honest, at this stage. I'd rather leave that until quite an advanced stage in the build, so I can actually see how it fits in with everything else and just get a whole feel for for the shape it should be. But anyway, I will get this glued on and get it profiled, and then we'll have a look. Right, we've got this all finished now, this nose section, the storage compartment, the engine bay, and of course the engine mounting template, because obviously that's going to be possibly aluminium or maybe something heavier eventually. Now if we have a quick look at this, we can see inside the engine bay there, and we've got that tube for the breather, and if we turn this over, we can see the breather tube coming out there. So we'll just have our silicone tubing coming out and a little bit just hanging out. Now I've got this roughly profiled. You can see it comes up to the point here on the underside of the fuselage, and that will meet the stringer eventually. And it's got quite a nice shape to it, but there's a little bit of a flat area here, and I think that would benefit from just having a little bit of a curved bow on it. So I think I may end up sticking a piece of 1/8 balsa on there just to fill that out really, so it fits in with this and that. If not, I'm going to have to flatten this area to fit in with that. Now I'm very aware that I haven't said how I'm going to fix the engine in. I've just put a pressure cylinder on the top so you can get an idea of how that looks. I have to be careful not to drop it, but that will fit nicely on there, and we've got that recess there for the prop driver to come out, or the front of the engine. Now I'm going to screw down. I've got some machine screws. I'm going to use 4, 2 either side, and I'm going to screw into the beach beam, and I've got these brass inserts, and I've got a whole bag of them there. And what you do essentially is you drill a hole. There's a special applicator, I suppose, or for fitting it anyway. So you drill a hole in the beach, you screw these brass inserts in, and then you can screw your machine screws in to hold that plate down. Now I've got these in M3 and M4. I think the M4, the 4mm screws or machine screws, will be much better to hold down the engine plate, so I'm going to use the 4mm. Now I'm not doing that at this stage. I'm not putting the screw inserts in and drilling the holes and everything, because I'd like to have them as far back as possible and as far and sort of fairly well forward, but I'm not sure how the cowl is going to be and how the windscreen is going to be, and I'm slightly worried that if I put them back here and then build up the cowl, I'm not going to be able to get access to them with an Allen hex driver. I might not be able to get excuse me, in because of the balsa coming round. So I'm going to leave that for a later date until I've got this cowl done, or at least more or less done. So anyway, I'm going to draw this video to a close now, and I hope you've enjoyed seeing the development of this nose and the storage underneath. I don't know whether I've shown you the storage. I'm just going to take the engine out before it goes skinny across the floor. But you can see hopefully you can see there's the hole there, and we can get a battery pack in there, no problem at all. I'll use 4-cell AAA rechargeables. This is for the radio gear, and if I use a square pack, they'll just go in there with plenty of room to spare. So anyway, I'm going to draw this video to a close now, and I hope you've enjoyed it, and please come back and see how we get on in the next part of the build, which I believe is going to be building the tailplane. And the tailplane is absolutely huge. This is half of it. So I mean it's nearly 3 foot or something. So anyway, thanks very much for watching.